Hi folks, thanks for joining me for this week's Stillwater tutorial. It's not really a fly for August, I've got to be honest, but if you're brave enough to hit the big reservoirs and you get the right conditions, then this will do you a turn. So without further ado, let's get into it. In the vise then is the Hanak H230 barbless hook. This one's at size 12. As you can see, it's a medium wire hook, and it's in black nickel. Now it's ideal for dry fly this. It's got that upturned point, I really like that, and it's super strong for the Stillwaters. You're not going to be catching tiny grayling with these. You know, you're looking at 2-pound fighting machines from the likes of Rutland and Grapham, so you need a strong hook. The thread I'm going to be using today is the Semperfly. This is Nano silk and it's at 12/0. First thing I'm going to do is get a little bit of wax onto my thread. I'm going to start in behind the eye and I'm going to come all the way back up the shank. I'm using my waist end here as a guide to get a nice even body of thread down, and I want to come beyond that, but I'm just going to take away my guide at this point. And what I'm going to do now is catch my tag, and I've added a tag to this fly as a trigger point for the fish. So what it is, it's Troutline UV ribbing fibre, and this one's violet. They come in different colours. If you haven't got this, you can use the Glow Bright, or there's any number of ways of getting round making tags. Silver wire, it's really up to yourself what you do. Now I've just used my thumb to flatten out the edge to try and reduce any bulk there. I'll just capture that in, and I'm going to come down hard on it. So I want to flatten it out with my Nano silk, and even at 12/0 this is super strong, so you can get quite a lot of pressure onto it. Then I'm going to come back up the shank of the hook, and then I can just bring my tag end around. It's super strong stuff this, so there's no requirement for any super glue or varnish to protect it. This will take whatever the trout can throw at it. Very tough. So once you've got your tag in, bring your thread over to meet it, and just a few turns to make sure you've caught it in. Then you can remove your waist. I'm going to save that little bit. It does for something else, which I might show you another time. Next I'm going to add in my wire rib. I'm going to be using the Venyards No27. It's a silver rib. I've already got a little bit off here that I've been working away with, and I'm going to catch that in the entire length of the body with open turns, and then I'm going to come back all the way down to where I want my tag to start. So I'm going to be using some seal's fur, and a couple of seal's furs actually. So the first one I'm going to put on is the black Claret. This is from Cookshill, and I've also got some hot orange, again from Cookshill. Nice stuff. So before I start dubbing my seal's fur on, as you might have seen in last week's video, I'm using some of this tacky wax, which is helping me no end with dubbing the seal's fur on. So just a little bit. It's a bit much softer, much more sticky than the wax I use for my thread. So I've got some of the seal's fur out the packet, and as we've discussed in the past, it's quite difficult to get this dubbed on nicely, so the wax just helps get that on. Seal's fur is obviously naturally buoyant, so it's ideal for this dry fly pattern. You can get substitutes, but some boys will argue that you can't beat the real McCoy, and I'm kind of in that camp. I'm not 100% in that camp. I'll say I'm 70-30. There is some synthetics out there now that's really buoyant and makes great dubbing. So I've got my black in all the way. Now if I was doing a Bibio hopper, I would have reduced that by half, added in a little bit of red, and then continued with the black. But I want just the hot orange in at the thorax. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that. You don't need much. And I'm going to dub that on. So it might be quite difficult for you to see. Let me see if I can just bring my thread around. So I've got black and then the hot orange. So that's looking not too bad at the minute. And I'm going to come just capturing that in at the back. And I'm going to try and proportion it out, keeping it even so that I get my thorax in at the thorax area. Remember, I'm going to put a wing in at the front, so I've got to leave myself plenty of space for that wing. That's looking okay. Before I go on, I often forget, I'm just going to add a little bit of wax to my thread. Next, the wire rib comes over. And you're looking for spacing of about 1/8 of an inch. All the way up, right through the thorax. And again, back onto the shank of the hook. Once you're there, a couple of turns to lock it into place. And then 2 or 3 turns in front of the wire. Keeping tension on your thread, you can then just twist the wire away. It comes off no bother. Now before I go on, I want to just come in with my dubbing brush here and just pull out some of that fibre. Nice and bushy, and once you get the old floatant on this, it just helps it all to float and flow. There we go, I'm fairly pleased with that. Next I'm going to add my legs. I've got the Lazy Man's pre-knotted pheasant tail, and I must look out for some of the natural one. This is dyed black, but I'm going to pick myself up the natural. I don't think I'll ever go back to tying my own because I've become fat and old. So I'm just going to pull away the legs, and I want to have them, if I can, either side of the hook. I'm going to bring it up underneath, and remember, tie your legs underneath. It's not much good to the fish if you tie your legs on top, because guess what, they won't see them. I've got a saying, up top for catching fishermen, down below for catching fish. I'm just using my bodkin needle to sort my legs out. Once I'm happy they're in the right place, I can then snip away the excess. That's looking not too bad. I'm just going to slick everything back with my thumb and forefinger and bring my thread up to the top. Again, while I remember, as I often forget, as I've just said, I'm going to add just a little bit of wax to my thread, and this will help with gripping the hackle. So I'm using a cock hackle here. This is a Grizzle hackle. It's been dyed black. It's got some lovely feathers on it, and you get nice banding. So I've already picked a feather out for the size of fly I've got here, and what I want to do is strip away some of this waste here. So I'm just going to grab my thumb and forefinger and pull that away. So I've left myself a little gap. Now I don't want to cut right up to the feather. I want to leave myself a little stalk so that I can attach it to the fly. Now simply bring it in. You don't want the stalk protruding past the eye, and with the first turn just make sure you've got it where you want it, and then you can lock that in, bringing your thread to just behind the eye. Now I've got obviously quite a big feather here, and I'm just going to bend that over a bit, get it sitting in the right direction. But even though I've got such a big feather, I still like to use a hackle plier. I don't know why, I just prefer it. So with the first turn, always the hardest, just bring the feather round, and as you bring it up over the top with your thumb and forefinger of your left hand, slick back as many feathers as you can. And one of my legs is just misbehaving there, so I'll just move that out of the way. Again, as I come over, I come in with my thumb and forefinger, bring it over, and again. And it's really up to yourself how buoyant you want the fly to be. If you want it just to be sitting in the film, then you don't need to probably do as many turns as I'm doing here. That'll do me though, I'm fairly happy with that. And the last turn, my thread comes over to meet that turn, and I'm just working my thread in between the fibres until I'm happy that I've secured it. I can take my hackle plier away at this point and pull everything back out the way. Get 2 or 3 turns in front, and then with my snips carefully come in and remove my waste. Now this little hackle, you know, you might just bin it, but I might get a very small fly for the rivers out of this. So what I do with these ends is I just put them in a bag, and then when I come to tie size 18s, size 20 dry flies for the river, I just pull these out, and it just saves a bit of expense. So slick everything back to form your head, and once you're happy you've got that in place, you can add a little bit of resin to the thread. Not much, you don't want to make a huge big head on this fly. In with a whip finish tool, pull it all in tight. You can remove your thread, don't forget to zap it. And if there's any fibres that you feel are too long, you can come in with a pair of tweezers, just pull them away. A couple of the orange ones, just a wee bit too long for my liking. And then to finish the whole job off, I like to come in with some muslin dry fly silicone and coat the whole fly. And this will sit on the water at least for the first couple of fish. After that you might have to treat it, but for the first couple that'll be good. Now if you want it to sit in the film, you simply trim away the bottom part of the hackle here carefully so that you don't cut your legs off, and the job's a good one. I hope you got some use out of that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider clicking the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time.